Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and U.S. President Donald Trump met this week at Mar-a-Lago. After 2 days of meetings, are the leaders on the same page when it comes to security on the Korean Peninsula? And how are younger generations in China addressing environmental concerns? Earlier, I spoke with the Executive Director of UN Environment to find out his ideas for spreading awareness and making change. Welcome to The Point. Live from Beijing, I'm Li Xin. U.S. President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe wrapped up their two-day meeting at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. During their talks, Trump pledged to raise the issue of Japanese nationals abducted by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or North Korea, decades ago. Trump and Abe also agreed to pile so-called maximum pressure on North Korea until it takes concrete steps toward complete, verifiable and irreversible denuclearization. But Trump's sudden acceptance of a meeting with the DPRK leader Kim without prior consultation among U.S. allies put the special relationship between the two leaders at risk. So did Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe achieve his goals with regard to the DPRK? Are Trump-Abe ties as close as they appear? Joining me today for the discussion from Tokyo is Takesato Watanabe, Professor Emeritus at Doshisha University, and from Washington, D.C., Jeffrey Hornon, Political Scientist at Rand Corporation. Before we go to the discussion, let's first listen to President Trump's statement on the issue.
If I think that it's a meeting that is not going to be fruitful, we're not going to go. If the meeting, when I'm there, is not fruitful, I will respectfully leave the meeting, and we'll continue what we're doing or whatever it is that will continue, but something will happen.
So, gentlemen, welcome to the show. Let me go to Professor Watanabe first. It seems that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was very eager and he wanted to make sure that he get the chance to meet U.S. President Donald Trump before the meeting between Trump and Kim Jong Un. So what were his priorities, what he needed to tell U.S. President Donald Trump, and what he needed to get from President Trump? Professor Watanabe.
Mr. Trump wants to have the support from any country of the world to make his impression better throughout the world. However, Mr. Abe, he is involved too much with the scandals now. You see, his supporters' rate is getting down and down, even lower than 1/3 now. And one media tells only 26% is supporting Mr. Abe. So he wants to have the support or give the performances to be hand in hand with Mr. Trump. But he doesn't have any good idea except going to Mr. Trump's, you see, the golf course and talk and get the support about North Korea in the point of the kidnapping children's problem. So this is not so big for Mr. Trump. Then Mr. Abe cannot get a good result. Oh, anybody in Japan knows those things. So I'm very sorry that the talks with Mr. Trump for Mr. Abe is not giving any good fruit for the people and also for his cabinet.
Mr. Hornon, what is your take on this issue, at least on how the relationship between Japan and the United States might have been impacted over the past year that Trump is in power? We know that, for instance, Shinzo Abe is a strong backer of maximum pressure on the DPRK, saying that dialogue for the sake of dialogue is meaningless, and yet President Trump's just accepted the invitation to have the meeting with Kim Jong Un without consulting any ally, including Japan. So in what kind of situation is Japan on this issue?
Well, when you look at their relationship, obviously Mr. Trump and Mr. Abe talk the most among world leaders from Mr. Trump's perspective. They spend a lot of time meeting, talking on the phone, and sources that are close to both say that they actually have a sincere trust of one another. Mr. Abe came here with a number of issues in mind, such as the tariffs, abduction issue, as well as moratorium on missile tests that could reach Japan. And I think that if you look at the results of what has happened here, it's a mixed bag. He'll go back to Japan with some promises, but really no tangible results. I think that there is still trust there. I don't think that this hurt the U.S.-Japan relationship or hurt the Abe-Trump relationship, but I think that it's yet to be seen what the results are once we have the Kim-Trump meeting, the North-South meeting, and then moving forward after that.
Now, despite all the commitments Trump has made to Prime Minister Abe, does Prime Minister Abe need to worry about the U.S. only acting in its own interest when it comes to dialogue with the DPRK, Professor Watanabe?
Mr. Abe wants to have the direct talk with Mr. Kim Jong Un because he wants to appeal himself to the people of Japan, not you see for the world. But Mr. Abe wants to be elected again as the Prime Minister in 6 months of time. So he is doing anything to become to continue the position of the Prime Minister. But as I said before, his supporting rate is getting down and down, and also the Vice Minister of the Finance Ministry is now involved in the 6 scandals. And many other things are coming out from the dark pond of his cabinet and also of his political activities. So the people in Japan, you see, actually they don't pay attention to anything about Mr. Abe is doing. So he wants to make the people's attention to outside of Japan. Then he went to Mr. Trump's golf course. Then he wanted to talk directly with Mr. Trump and wanted to show his performance that the relations between Japan and the United States is so close. However, world politics is so severe. So the people in Japan, also the governments of other countries of the world, they don't pay attention to the talks itself between Abe and Mr. President Trump.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the kind of diplomacy that has been taking place before the expected meeting between Trump and Kim. Now, Kim already met with Chinese President Xi Jinping last month. Then he will meet with the Republic of Korea President Moon Jae-in end of April. And next up is the planned meeting between Kim and Trump sometime in May or June. But no meeting is planned or expected or envisioned in any fashion between Abe and Kim. Mr. Hornon, do you see any possibility that there could be some kind of direct communication or talk between these two sides anytime soon? Is Abe trying to insert himself into the conversation?
Well, I know in late March, there were signals coming out of Tokyo that they were trying to get some sort of meeting, or at least they were interested in having a meeting with Pyongyang. Whether or not that's moving forward, that's still unknown. The fact that Mr. Abe came to Washington, D.C. to make sure that Japanese interests are prioritized alongside U.S. interests is an important note, because at least it's showing that if Abe cannot get that meeting, that at least he's injecting Japanese interests into the dialogue.
Professor Watanabe, under what circumstances do you think a meeting between Abe and Kim would be possible?
The meeting between Mr. Trump and Mr. Abe is naturally going like that. But the meeting Mr. Abe wants to have with Mr. Kim Jong Un is impossible. Seems to be nearly impossible, because there's no benefit for Mr. Kim Jong Un to have the meeting with Prime Minister, except if he can get financial support of the Japanese government to North Korea. So this takes a little more time. So during the period of the Prime Ministership in Tokyo, Mr. Kim Jong cannot expect anything financial support from Japanese government. So for him, no possibility of having the the close meeting between Mr. Kim and Mr. Abe. So for North Korea, the main concerns is China, the United States, and also support from Putin, Russia. So this is all.
So the official media of the DPRK in early April criticized Japan for going against the trend in the region and sticking to its anti-DPRK policy. In a commentary, the Korean Central News Agency KCNA said, as recognized by the public, the Abe government's tried hardline policy and attitude toward the DPRK are no more than grumbling by the lonely island nation, which was sidelined under the developing regional situation. The commentary also went on to say that Japan persists in pursuing an anti-DPRK policy in order to turn its home politics into reactionary and ultra-right ones and to step up rearmament and become a military giant. Mr. Hornon, what do you make of this kind of comments?
Well, that comment is a lot of just rhetoric coming out of Pyongyang. Obviously, there's a lot of animosity there, and Pyongyang's strategy for decades has been to try to split the U.S. allies in any way that it can. Now, obviously, Japan, as you noted, Japan is not part of this diplomacy that's happening in the region, although it's certainly just talking with Seoul. You see that you have officials in Tokyo this week from Beijing. There's a lot that Tokyo is doing. It is talking about its interests. It is getting its interests across. Whether or not this actually results, for instance, in the resolution of the abduction issue, I'm skeptical about that because that is more of a bilateral issue between Pyongyang and Tokyo. It's not really an issue for others to be pushing on, although they can remind Pyongyang about it. But to discount Japan completely out of the picture, I think, is missing a little bit of the point here.
Well, we have to leave it there. Many thanks to my two guests, Takesato Watanabe, Professor Emeritus at the Doshisha University in Japan, and in Washington, D.C., Jeffrey Hornon, a political scientist at RAND Corporation. And you have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll take a short break and we'll be back right after this. And I'll be talking to, I talked to Erik Solheim, the Executive Director of UN Environment and Under-Secretary General of the United Nations. Stay with us for that interview. In 2018, 7 young people will be named Young Champions of the Earth, part of a global initiative that aims to identify, celebrate and support individuals between the ages of 18 and 30 with outstanding potential to create a positive impact on our environment. Launched in 2017, this competition has drawn attention and environmental ideas from around the world. On April the 18th, Erik Solheim, UN Environment Executive Director and Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, visited China and presented the title of a UN Environment National Goodwill Ambassador for China to a young actor and singer who has tens of millions of followers just on the Chinese social media Weibo. So what kind of role do young people, especially young people in China, play in saving our planet? And what is China doing to prepare its younger generations to face the environmental challenges? I'm pleased to be joined by Erik Solheim to talk about these issues. Mr. Solheim, thank you very much for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much.
As I mentioned, you were here to present the UN Environment National Goodwill Ambassador for Youth to Wang Junkai, who has over 40 million followers on the Chinese equivalent to the Twitter, which is called Weibo. What do you want to get out of his fame?
Engagement with his fans, looking into how they can act to improve the environment. They can put pressure on or engage with political leaders and business to get something done. They can come up with ideas by themselves. And of course, when they go to a shop and buy something, they can ask for the most environment-friendly product.
Of course, I understand that Junkai has been active, right, in environmental protection, and sometimes his tweets get hundreds of millions of retweets and comments, so I guess that is a great thing that you want. But how can you make sure that these messages will really, that these retweets and these thumbs up, sometimes millions of them, can really translate into concrete action by the young people who are following Junkai to really do something about the environment?
No, it's like this. I mean, it's of course not one organization who do everything for the environment in the world. It's what everyone is doing in their daily life, choosing the best products, engaging with friends and others to put forward messages, but also the pressure which is coming from below to political leaders. I mean, the political leaders of China are now acting very determinedly, starting with President Xi Jinping himself, but all the leaders are really trying to do something for the environment. That's because they believe in it themselves. It's also because there is a strong pressure from Chinese society where they tell the leaders, please act, we don't want this pollution any longer, and we want a beautiful China which we really want to protect.
Right. If you compare Chinese youth, which has a huge number, almost 280 million in China, right, aged between 10 and 25. If you compare this group of people with a group of people in Nairobi, Kenya, and then a group of people in Northern Europe, let's say, and then a group of people in the United States, how would you define the Chinese youth in terms of their awareness and their ability to really act?
I think there is a very, very strong determination in Chinese society to act. This comes from the fact that China has been through more profound, more wide-ranging changes than any other society. First time I come here to Beijing, there was no cars in the streets of Beijing whatsoever. There was one metro line just under the Tiananmen Square. Now it's the biggest metro system in the world. There is any number of cars. China has built more high-speed rail than any other nation in human history. So there have been so enormous changes for the better. I mean, the average Chinese is much better educated, much better fed, much less poor than in the past. So this is a fantastic development. But it has come with a price, which I think most people see. The price is pollution. And lots of people say, yes, we are really happy that we are so much better off, but I want to see the sun. I don't want my children to live in this hell of pollution. So that's why we see this really strong determination to act. And China in all of history has proven a fantastic ability to act when people decide to act.
What are the differences that you have noticed in the way how Chinese youth approach environmental issues, let's say, with their African counterpart or American counterpart? Are there anything that is very uniquely Chinese that you want to tap into?
Just as a parallel, I just visited one of the lead businesses in China yesterday, Didi, which is one of the biggest car sharing and car pooling and car renting company in the world. But when you look to the business philosophy, it's very similar to, say, Google or the best companies in the United States or in Europe. So a lot of this is also kind of simply common humanity, common sense for everyone.
You mentioned shared cars. That does bring me to this age and this idea of a shared economy. What I noticed is, for instance, is online shopping, e-commerce, and all of this, you know, ordering food instead of cooking yourself. It's producing so much more waste. I see it on a daily basis. Just this morning, I picked up a plastic package, and I asked myself, what can I do about it? So what is being done in this regard?
If there's one area where everyone really can make a difference, this is one of them. I mean, the plastic pollution to the world is now so absolutely horrendous, and it must stop. Just a few weeks back, an elephant died in India because of eating plastics. A big whale had 40 kilos of plastic in its stomach, dying in Spain. And you see turtles or seabirds getting this into the bodies, and of course at the end of the day it ends up in the human body being a health hazard, because small plastic pieces go into fish and then into our bodies. This must stop. But what can be done? You can start with the very simple. Why do we need straws? Can't we drink from the bottle or from the cup? Why do we need artificially added plastic to a lot of perfume products? It serves no purpose. Or if you go to a shop and buy 2 apples or a banana, why do you need it to be wrapped into any amount of plastic? So let's get rid of what we don't need, and then the plastic we do need for different purposes, it must be recycled, so we get into new products. Some of the best soccer teams in the world, say Real Madrid, has been playing with shirts completely made of recycled plastics, so it can be used for new good products. But we need to change, and we can change. 14 years back, we were allowed to smoke in every restaurant on planet Earth. Now basically we are not allowed to smoke in any restaurant on planet Earth. So this change has happened just in 14 years. This is a very short period of time.
All right. Well, I feel frustrated because I have the awareness of environmental protection. I want to sort my garbage, but even if I sort it at home, when I bring them out on the streets or in the compound, there's nowhere to put them because it's just not there. You know, the system of sorted garbage. Do you have any idea how that can be changed?
Yeah, that shows this relationship between individual and people acting, really pushing an issue, and you need political leadership to change the structures. That's what we see now in China after the National People's Congress last month. There was an enormous determination. The Minister of Environment is much powerful and stronger. President Xi got into the constitution concepts like beautiful China, ecological civilization. So you see this very strong leadership from the top. If you add then a strong push from below, you will get a very powerful combination.
Mm-hmm. And what is going to be the first concrete message that Jin Kai will be sending out as the UN Environment National Goodwill Ambassador for Youth? What do you want him to tackle first?
Believe it or not, that he will decide himself. So because he's an individual, that's what makes him strong. He sends his messages. Mm-hmm. But we, of course, believe that pollution is a strong issue in China, reducing the air pollution in the cities, getting rid of the plastics, which is a very personal issue we can attack, but also protecting this beautiful land with all this wildlife, with its tigers, with its pandas, but of course with all the less well-known species.
What kind of timeline do you foresee for efforts by countries like China in improving their environment?
I think we should all remember that China has brought more people out of poverty at a shorter period of time than any other nation in human history. What took maybe 200 years in the United States and in Europe has taken basically 40 years in China, which is fabulous rapid development with so positive consequences. China now can turn into an environment with the same determination, the same speed. We will see groundbreaking changes for China. And this is also very important to the rest of the world because it develops technologies and practices for the rest of the world. China, only 2 years back, bike sharing was not common in China. Then a couple of companies, Mobike, Ofo, came up and really turned into a huge business in China, but now spreading to the rest of the world. China, by the way, now has 50% of all the new solar energy which comes into the grid in the world. That's very good for China, but it also brings down the price so much that everywhere in the world solar cannot compete with coal for new investments.
What do you say to the people who still are not believing in climate change, in global warming? We just saw this short video, for instance, that went viral, during which a comedian, possibly from the United States, says that, you know, plastic, we all call plastic a waste, but plastic came from the earth as well, so the earth will be able to reabsorb it anyway. So how do you counter that kind of statement? For me, it was, I didn't know the answer. Could you enlighten us?
All the dangerous diseases also come from the earth, aren't they? I mean, lots have killed us up through human history, measles or smallpox or tuberculosis. I mean, they also all come from the earth. Still, we wanted to contain them and defeat them. So that something is a natural product. I mean, of course, plastic coming from oil, which we bring up, but it's destroying our life. But the idea that climate change is a hoax, as sometimes is said in the United States. Well, it's very strange because the same people who say that, they believe that NASA, the space agency, can take us to the moon or even to Mars. Same people believe that modern science can cure some of the most dangerous diseases. Some people believe in artificial intelligence, a self-driving car. So they believe in all aspects of science, except to pick one where they decide not to believe.
Does that make your work a little bit more challenging?
A little bit, but nearly all political leaders and the vast majority of the global population accept science. So the most important is to turn that into real action, as you have asked so many times in this
Right. Finally, to the viewers, to the average viewers that are watching us, what will be one practical advice that you would give them so that everybody a little bit, overall, the environment can be slightly better in a short period of time?
today start with the plastics, because the plastic we put into planet Earth is now horrendous. We will have more weight of plastic in the oceans by 2050 than weight of fish. That must stop, and here individuals can also act, avoid all the plastics we don't need, and ask your municipality to make certain that you can recycle the rest of it.
So use as few plastics as possible. That was my interview with Erik Solheim, UN Environment Executive Director and Under-Secretary General of the United Nations. That's it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch our show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. Keep going.